everybody. It's the masked spoofer, the one, the only, original, authentic, your naughty girl from Texas. Rawr. It's spooky time with Spoof. Are you ready to get scared? Moo ha 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 ha. Today's story is called The Haunting of Bedman's Creek. The sun had just touched upon the western horizon as 11-year-old Dylan Smith and his father Mike rounded the bend of a sleepy oxbow while river fishing. Moving against a choppy current in a 16-foot john boat, Mike slowed to a trolling speed as they approached the mouth of Bedman's Creek. "It's getting late, Dad." Dylan felt a sudden flood of apprehension. "I'd rather not go up the creek, this close to dark." Ominous shadows fell over the entrance of the narrow waterway, cast from overhanging trees that hugged the creek's steep bank. Overgrown shrubs and a canopy of interwoven vines, reminiscent of a jungle, created an illusion of entering a tunnel. "We won't go far, just to the old bridge." Mike headed into the creek despite his son's reservations, dodging branches that crowded the gloomy passageway. "This creek is creepy at night." Dylan ducked to avoid a large spider web that stretched the width of the creek. That was close. He glanced back. "That is one big spider." "A golden silk orb weaver," Mike told him. "A banana spider." Consumed by a sense of dread, Dylan sat down next to his dad and stared at the eerie view ahead, tuning in on the forlorn hoot of an owl in the near distance. "It's getting cold." He shivered, suddenly aware of a drastic drop in temperature, and rubbed his arms to brush off the unexpected chill. "This is weird for this time of the year." His breath fogged when he spoke. Glancing up at the treetops that swayed to a doleful moan, Dylan's uneasiness turned to utter fear when a faint, drawn-out whisper emanated from the woodsy banks on the left and rode on a gust of wind. "One." The word was distinct, possessing a cold, unearthly tone. "Did you hear that? I think someone is watching us." Dylan visually searched the dark bank, pretty sure he detected movement, but it was hard to distinguish what was there, what might be looking back. "I didn't hear anything." Mike showed no concern. "There are a lot of animals scurrying around these woods. Squirrels, raccoons, armadillos." He maneuvered the boat past a fallen cabbage palm that half blocked the waterway. It wasn't an animal. No one could convince Dylan otherwise. He was certain of what he'd heard and feared that someone, or something other than a forest animal, was following them along the shadowy bank. "Let's turn around, Dad, please. I have a feeling something bad is about to happen." "Don't be ridiculous, Dylan. There's nothing in these woods at night that isn't here during the day." Mike kept going. "I told you, we'll go as far as the old bridge." Reaching the widest point of the creek known as Blind Bend, where the waterway ballooned to a span of at least 30 feet, The creek made a sharp left turn before bottlenecking back to its original narrow course. I heard a whisper, Dad. Dylan divulged exactly what he'd heard. It wasn't an animal. It didn't even sound human. You've fished Bedman's Creek a lot over the years. Have you ever experienced anything strange? Could it be haunted? You know I don't believe in such nonsense. Mike continued to follow the winding waterway that gradually constricted as they moved deeper inland. What was that? Dylan scrambled to his feet, startled by a loud splash near the bank. Probably an alligator. Mike cut the engine lever to neutral. I'd say it was a big one. The small boat rocked in the wake of the splash. Maybe. Dylan visually scanned the bank. Wait. Someone's over there. Do you see those two people? He caught sight of two dark, featureless figures that appeared to be children, their silhouetted forms barely perceptible. They looked like shadow kids. Before Mike could respond, the two figures faded away, disappearing into the dark, shadow-laden surroundings. Dylan then heard a second whisper, only this time there were two disembodied voices riding on a gust of wind. Two. The drawn-out word was faint but clear. Dylan's blood ran cold. You must have heard that. He didn't understand how his father could remain so calm. I heard something, Mike admitted. Probably just the wind blowing through the trees. There's always a logical explanation. It wasn't the wind, Dad. There are strange shadow kids out here with us. First, one of them whispered one, and just now, right after seeing the two figures on the bank, I heard them whisper two. There are no such things as shadow kids, Dylan. Mike returned the drifting boat to idle speed and continued along their serpentine course. Please, Dad, we need to get out of here. Dylan feared a point of no return, afraid that every inch they continued to move along the haunted creek lessened their chances of escaping. At that moment, the silhouetted beings appeared a third time on the bank, next to the remnants of an old dock. The shadow kids are back, and now there are three of them, Dylan alerted his dad. Three. The shadow kids' voices simultaneously chimed a third drawn-out whisper that caused Dylan to shudder with fear. Mike glanced towards the bank. The wind is really howling, making some strange noises. That was not the wind. It's the shadow kids, and this time they said three. You're making me jumpy with all this nonsense. Mike continued along the course. Why won't you believe me? They're following us along the bank right now. Look, Dad. Can't you see them? Dylan pointed. Please tell me you see them. Stop it, Dylan. What you're seeing is nothing more than the play of light and shadows. You're seeing things that aren't there. Mike kept his eyes peeled on the course ahead. We're just about at the bridge. We'll do a little fishing and then we'll head back. Dylan watched in paralyzing fear as the three shadow kids continued to follow along the bank, his heart pounding harder and faster as Mike steered the boat toward an old wooden bridge. Well, we made it. Toss me that rope and I'll tie off the boat. Mike pointed towards the bow. He shut off the boat motor and waited while the swift-moving current carried them beneath the structure. Upon exiting the opposite side of the bridge, he quickly lassoed across support and secured the boat in place. "They're watching us, Dad." Dylan broke his momentary silence. "Right there." He pointed toward the bank. "They want something. We're not going to get any fishing done until I prove to you that there is nothing over there." Mike reached into a storage compartment and pulled out his spotlight. Shining its bright beam of light onto the bank, he immediately drew in a quick breath. What? What are those things?" He stammered in disbelief. "I'm sorry, Dylan. I should have believed you. I see them now." "We need to get out of here and fast." Dylan stressed the urgency. "If it's not already too late." Mike quickly untied the boat and started the motor. "I don't know what those things are, but we're not sticking around a minute longer to find out. Hold on tight, we're getting out of here." Speeding away, Dylan's blood turned icy cold when a fourth shadow kid suddenly materialized on top of the bridge and glared down at them with glowing red eyes. "Hurry, Dad!" Dylan yelled, overcome by the worst fear he had ever experienced when the menacing figure roared the word "forward" and bolted them from the bridge, joining the other 3 shadow kids in pursuit along the bank. "They're chasing us! There are 4 of them now!" It didn't take long to reach the remnants of the old dock, where once again a menacing whisper echoed from the bank. 3. The ominous word rang louder and deeper than before. The hair on the back of Dylan's neck stood on end. "They're getting closer." Mike expertly maneuvered the boat along the narrow, twisting course at a remarkable speed, but the shadow kids continued to close in on them in aggressive pursuit. 2. A second ghostly whisper drifted from the woodsy banks as they neared Blind Bend. "Hurry, Dad!" Dylan watched in terror as the shadow kids shape-shifted from human-like forms to monster-like forms. "They're catching up with us, and they're definitely not human." He kept his eyes peeled on what were no longer shadow kids, but shadow creatures. Mike struggled to maintain speed and control against a fierce and sudden squall. The windstorm came out of nowhere. "They're trying to stop us. Just keep going, Dad. Whatever you do, don't stop." Barely staying ahead of their nightmarish pursuers, Mike had just dodged the falling cabbage palm that half blocked the waterway when a third whisper echoed on a howling gust of wind. 1. The ghostly whisper was the deepest and most fearsome by far. Dylan watched in horror as the creatures grew closer and closer until practically parallel with the boat. "We're not going to make it." His gaze locked on the red-eyed shadowed creature, fearing a terrible, inescapable fate. "We're almost there." Mike made a mad dash for the mouth of the creek, fighting against an ever-strengthening windstorm. "We're not going to make it." Dylan feared that the small boat might overturn at any moment. Now, only mere feet from the mouth of Bedman's Creek, the red-eyed shadow creature releasing a piercing cry and lunged toward the boat at the exact moment Dylan and Mike exited the waterway. No! Dylan yelled and dove to the floor, thinking this would be a grisly end for him and his dad. We made it. Mike glanced back at the creek. That thing just exploded into a cloud of black mist, like it struck some invisible barrier. The shadow creatures, they're gone? Dylan got up off the floor just in time to spot an oncoming boat. Look out, Dad! Mike immediately cut the engine down to idle speed, watching as a bass boat approached, driven by a man dressed in a red and black flannel. As the boat drew nearer, Dylan saw that a second person was on board. Trolling from the stern, a blonde-headed boy around his own age of 11, wearing a Nike jacket and cap. Hello, the man waved as they slowly passed by. Did you have any luck at the creek? Are the fish biting? Stay out of Bedman's Creek, Mike warned the stranger. We just barely escaped some kind of shadow creatures. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. The man laughed. Ha ha ha. Good joke. Trying to keep the good fishing spots to yourself, huh? It's no joke, Mike called out to the man. Trust me, there really are shadow creatures in that creek. The man laughed again. You better come up with a better story than shadow creatures if you want to scare people away from the good spots. No, it's the truth. Mike tried to convince the man, who continued idling towards the mouth of the creek. Stay out of Bedman's Creek. If you go in there, you will regret it. He yelled out one final warning. Dylan could hear the man and boy laughing as they entered the mouth of the creek. You did warn them, Dad. Yeah, Mike sighed. They were warned. He looked at Dylan. They're on their own. We're going home. He shifted their engine into high gear and sped away. As they rode, Dylan wondered what the shadow creatures actually were and why they were haunting Bedman's Creek. It was a dark mystery he knew he would probably never solve, because he had no intention of ever entering the mouth of Bedman's Creek again, day or night. Never again. The next afternoon, Dylan and his parents were having dinner at the dining room table, watching the local news on a TV that was viewable from the family room. Dad. Dylan suddenly dropped his fork. Do you hear that news report? They're talking about 2 people missing since last night. A man and a boy whose last known location was fishing the river in a bass boat. Mike stared at the TV, listening as the reporter continued her story and gave a description of the missing man and boy. Eugene Millard was last seen wearing a red and black flannel shirt. His son Matthew, age 11, was wearing a Nike jacket and cap. If you have any information regarding their whereabouts, please call 999-976-1234. Dylan's eyes grew wide when the missing duo's pictures appeared on the screen. That's them, Dad. That's the man and boy we saw yesterday. It sure is, Mike confirmed in low spirits. They should have listened. Your dad told me what happened. Susan, Dylan's mother, said. I never believed in the haunting of Bedman's Creek until now. What haunting? Dylan was eager to know. Well, throughout the years, It has been told that 4 shadow kids inhabit the creek, but they seldom appear to the living, Susan told him. When they do make an appearance, they are heard calling out numbers from various spots along the bank of the creek, beginning on the count of 1 and continuing until a red-eyed shadow creature appears on the count of 4. When that final red-eyed creature appears, a chase is initiated, and if their prey is caught before escaping the creek, the victims are snatched through the watery depths into the netherworld. Why do they count to 4? Dylan was curious. According to the legend, it is a game that the Shadow Kids play. They are said to guard 4 bases that are positioned along the creek, calling out each base as it is passed. Then when their opponent reaches the 4th base, which is alleged to be the old bridge, the red-eyed shadow creature appears and yells, "4!" setting a cat and mouse chase into action. That's exactly what happened to us. Dylan could hardly believe it was all just a game, a horrible, horrifying game. And they almost caught us. Very few people have been lucky enough to win the game and survive the haunting of Bedman's Creek, Susan said. I can't imagine the Shadow Kids like to lose. No, probably not. Dylan recalled the fierce predators. We were lucky. Very lucky, Mike concurred. We managed to outrun them, but we were only mere seconds away from being dragged down through the murky water and into the netherworld. Yep, it was a close call. Dylan would never forget that terrifying experience. We played the Shadow Kids game and won. Sadly, I can't say the same for Eugene and Matthew Millard, who apparently weren't so lucky. Dylan imagined the duo trapped in a dark, grim netherworld with many other ill-fated victims who proceeded before them. For, like his mom said, very few people have been lucky enough to win the game and survive the haunting of Bedman's Creek. Moo ha 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 ha. I hope you enjoyed our story. Enjoy your spooky Halloween. Rawr!